Hi, friends, and welcome to Costuming in Color. We're a YouTube show dedicated to showcasing amazing costumers of color and the people who support them. I'm Gigi, history buff, dabblist, and historical costumer.
And I'm Noelle, and I'm a costumer who likes to play both sides of the historical and cosplay world. Today, we are interviewing Drew of So Drew. Welcome to the show, Drew. So Drew.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're so excited to meet you today.
But before
I'm so excited to be here. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I can tell you're excited. We're excited to have you, but we do have some house rules that we have to get out of the way. So the first rule of costuming in color is that you tell everyone about costuming in color.
That way, even if you don't have people of color in your local group, you can get to know some in our global community.
Yes. The second rule is that kindness matters. Aside from that, there are no rules. So let's get into it. All right. So my first question for you is, where are you from? And do you still live there?
Okay, so I am originally from Anchorage, Alaska. Both of my parents were in the military when I was a little kid, and I'm so proud of this. My kids' names are Maverick and Major, but no, I do not still live there. I currently live right outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
That's awesome. What's your favorite thing about where you live?
So for me, I'm living right outside of Louisville. We have all of the amenities and the perks and the great things that big cities offer while still having that cozy small town feel. That's just like a really, really good place to raise kids and do that sort of thing.
So tell us a little bit about your IG handle. What is it and why did you choose it?
Okay, so Drew, for me, it was a play on the fact that I consider myself just so at sewing and pretty much everything else I try. I try everything and I consider myself just so. And so the play on the words was so is spelled as SEW instead of SO.
That's so cute. I love that. I didn't know that that's why that was. I thought you were like cheerleading. So Drew.
No, I'm like, it's just
same.
It's
I
just
thought you were
so.
Well, I don't think you're so. That's just my personal
I don't either.
opinion. But I do think you so.
Yeah.
So I think, and for my YouTube was at first it was the so seamstress, and then I changed over to just my name.
I have regret about not just having it be my name also.
So for me, when I first started, I was very secretive about the fact, I guess, that I wanted YouTube and that I'm this huge vintage nerd and all of these things. And so I kind of wanted it hidden in a way. And so as I'm becoming more comfortable with myself and me being a nerd and all of those things, I was like, you know what? I don't want to hide all of these parts of me anymore. So this is who I am. And so if you're looking for me, if you Google me, you're going to get the real me. And it is a very big nerd in a 1950s dress that I made myself.
That's cute. What is the costuming scene like where you live?
I'm still figuring that out. I'm so new to everything, but I do know that we do have the Jane Austen Festival here every year. Mm-hmm. And so they have that at Locust Grove. And it is something that I'm hoping to attend soon. And I would like to go in some Regency things that I've made myself. And so that would be my dream right there. But I think there is also like the reenacting, it's Kentucky. And so I think that scene has a pretty decent sized community.
Cosplay, historical, or both?
Historical, if I have to choose one, but I'm going to say vintage, which I guess I'm starting to think it leans more towards historical. So
vintage is historical, people.
Thanks for saying that.
Like the 1980s is historical at this point. Like,
yep.
Yeah.
I know, right? So I always thought though in my head that it was anything 100 years or more made it historical. So at that point, this is like the 1920s at least are historical.
To me, it was always a question of underwear. So like, when the underwear went from corsets to no corsets, that's when it went from historical to vintage. But
I think that's a good way to quantify it.
Yeah. But like, no, we still all can, like, that's still historical costuming, all of us. I think the thing about it being vintage or historical is actually that 100-year thing is actually antiques. So anything over 25 years is vintage until you get to 100 years and then it becomes an antique. And so I think people have like conflated antique with historical, but historical costumers like think anything in history is just like 1970s is historical. Like at this point, that was like 40 years ago, so 50 years ago. So like, yeah, it's all historical.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
I think of historical as an umbrella, like a big tent.
Same.
And in it is vintage, which is a subset because it is in the past. And all the other eras, you know, are just equally historical. Just we are more familiar with that, you know, the history of the 60s and the 50s because we have grandparents and parents who were alive then. So it seems more modern, but I accept you as historical.
Same.
I said what I said.
Well, thanks. I'm sure that's going to make my vintage friends very happy because we're always wondering exactly where we fit in this line between historical and vintage, of course. And often we feel a little bit on the outside or the outskirts of that. And so to hear that you guys include us in a space that we don't even include ourselves, I mean, that's awesome. And that feels good.
The more the merrier.
Yeah.
And I really look up to the things you guys do as, you know, vintage costumers, all the details that go into making your whole look right. And the fact that you can actually get some real vintage things like actual vintage brooches and hats and some garments is just amazing to me because to buy a 15th century anything is not going to happen for me. I cannot afford that kind of, if there even is an extant piece, I can't afford it.
Yeah, and the vintage, to be able to purchase vintage, like you said, it is so awesome. Things that are, you know, in really still good quality and are usually in high demand and hard to find. But I've started the hunt for more authentic vintage pieces. But I got to go with a few vintage YouTubers, Stephanie Canada and Haley from Haley Marie Vintage. And we went to this huge sale in Tuberville, South Carolina, where it was an old dressmaking factory as well as a dress store. And it had been closed down and completely untouched for 50 years. And so,
like with clothes in it?
Yes, clothes, fabric, you name it, it was there. We just lost it as soon as we walked through the door. It was such an amazing experience just to experience that much history and be around it and touch it, and you could smell it. And it was one of the better experiences of my entire life. It was awesome. And so I think all three of us did videos on it. And so they're up on their channels as well. Stephanie's, of course, is hilarious. And then mine is a little more sentimental. And then Haley's is a little more factual. So it's like, we're both here and she's like, here's the facts. Like, this is what actually happened. So it was just three great perspectives of it. Because for me, it was just emotional, needless to say. And then to be there with them, of course, it was just like kind of summed up everything about YouTube for me. It's like I'm experiencing these things I've always wanted to experience, and I'm doing it with people who share the same interests, who support me, and just this sense of community. It was just an amazing experience. And my first trip without my kids or husband. So it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I love how costuming does that. Like it releases you into your own little world that you're allowed to inhabit, and you can check out for a little bit from reality, which is really nice.
That is exactly it. That is exactly it. And especially in these times, sometimes you just want to check out from the current state of affairs. And so that's an excellent way to put it. And that's how it felt, like literally being transported into another realm. And I'm not like a huge outdoorsy kind of girl, but in this space, I was just like sitting in the grass and, you know, really just taking it. And it was like a little old town. The town even felt old. And it was just like literally just stepping back in time. And it was just awesome to be there.
That sounds so wonderful.
It was. It really was.
So what time period or place is your favorite to partake in?
At first it was the 50s because I was just into, you know, the big full skirts and the drama of all of that. And then I kind of started to discover the 40s. And while the silhouettes are simpler, but because of, you know, the war going on then and people forced to make do and mend, as they say, I think people got a lot more creative with what they were working with. And so the 40s are all about those little details, the gathers at the shoulder and the waistline, and just the little things that you could do to make a dress or any garment just extra special. So right now I'm feeling the 40s.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have any interest in going like more historical, like farther back?
I totally do, as most of the, I won't say all, I won't speak for everybody, but most of the vintage girls, we all do. And I think we're just a little scared to kind of step into that realm. But I think we're all kind of itching there. And for me, it is the Civil War era. That is the spot that I'm looking at in my first historical project. I have all the materials for a dress from that era and for the hoop skirt and all of that, but I have yet to cut into that silk. Still
Just
very afraid to cut into that silk.
Just cut the silk.
I am terrified of cutting into that silk.
I'm going to give you my number, and then you're going to call me, and I'll sit on the phone with you and just be like, cut the silk.
She will. She will. She's just, I just took took delivery of another load of silk that you're going to have to coach me through cutting. Noelle. Okay. So just be ready for that.
I'll ask you the question that all white people want to ask you. So, Civil War, really?
Yes. The 1860s, it started just because I really love the silhouette of the 1860s. And then, as getting into the history of that and into the Civil War, and of course, living here in Kentucky, it took a while for myself, as a woman of color to rectify that I was so romantically, I guess, attracted to this stage in our history that is not a pretty one. Mm-hmm. And so to decide that would be my era, it took a lot of, thought on my own part and conversation with people older than I. And I just, for me, came to the conclusion that I think, like I said, I think that my ancestors would be happy to see me in a gown of silk that at that time I wouldn't have had the luxury to be able to wear, not to afford or even be allowed to wear. And so I think, that's part of what we're doing here is we're not skipping over history or trying to erase it. I think we all just want to make it look a little better, make it look a little prettier. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that while still acknowledging the things that have happened. And so I think it would almost be an honor to cut into that silk and to sew that gown and wear that gown that I would have not been able to wear. And so I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think we all kind of need to be open to other perspectives in terms of the history that isn't so pretty, and understand that none of us have all of the answers. We all have different perspectives and different insights, but I think we all bring something to the discussion. So let's just keep discussing, and especially if we're all doing it in a way that's respectful and honest, and facts are facts. You can't erase those. So if we can come from a place of facts and respect and trying to see each other's point of views, I think that's a big part of what we're all doing here. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
And by the same token, I also had those same hesitancies when I was thinking about that period in history. Would I ever do it? And when I look at some of the people who actually do they do living history for that time period, I had a lot of respect for them, but I just didn't understand how it wouldn't be too emotional to delve into. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of fear there because I'm like, can I handle interpreting that period for other people to ask me questions? Like, would it be just too emotional, too much of a burden for me? And then just what you said is what really helps clear it up for me. What about my ancestors? Mm-hmm. What would they think? They had hopes and dreams and thoughts and worries that I can connect with through this historical costuming. And I would like to do that. I'm not going to glorify the bad things that happened to them. I'm not going to erase them. I'm going to face them, but I'm also going to honor the fact that they were human beings and they were multifaceted. And by me looking at that time period as a viable time period for me to interpret, for me to make clothes for, I'm actually honoring them. And I'm wanting to connect with them in a way that, I don't know what tribe in Africa my ancestors came from. I don't know. I will never know. But I can tell you about Blacks in the South in the 1860s in Louisiana. I can go to archives. I can see their names. I've seen their names. So it's more of, for me, an emotional connection than an emotional burden now. It's really turned it around. And I'm glad that you also can open yourself up to the possibility that would be something that you could do. I'm really happy that you say that, because you sew so well. See what I did there? So well. I would love to see what you did if you ever do that time period.
100%.
Thank you. And I mean, this has actually helped me feel a lot better about it to hear you speak on it and hear that we do share some of the same views, because it is such a touchy subject. And even for me as a Black woman, I'm still sometimes afraid to articulate my own thoughts about it. I often don't want to say or do the wrong thing or offend someone. And so I think not just for people who aren't of color, but it's a little touchy for everybody. And it's you know, you have to be vulnerable to really put yourself out there to express your views on it. And so, and then sometimes if you say or do the wrong thing and then you get canceled, it just forces people to go back into that shell of not wanting to talk about it. And I think this conversation is where the beauty and the growth, and as you said, the honor happens, and honoring the past. And I just have to think that a woman that looked like me from the 1860s would get a hoot out of me stepping out in that silk ball gown. And so, yeah, I think I just might cut that silk tonight.
Yay. I did want to say something kind of to Gigi's comment, which is like, Gigi does a historical interpretation a lot of times, but that doesn't mean that all costuming needs to be interpretive. Like, if you feel like you want to make a 1860s ball gown and go to, let's not go to Dickens Fair, but like a Dickens Fair, where you want to wear that, and it's not your primary responsibility to interpret by any means or be available for question, like that is not your responsibility. If you choose to do that, that's your choice, but that is not something you have to do. So if you feel
I'm glad you said that, and I hope we can normalize that too. Like, you know, we do have a responsibility to history doing this, but at the same time, sometimes can we just be having fun? Like,
right.
Can that just be it? So no, I totally agree with that.
And white people out there, don't be asking them a million questions unless they offer that service to you, and then pay them.
But okay. Yeah, and be okay with it. We don't have the answers either.
Yeah. That's not everybody is into research in the same way, guys. Like that is.
Yes, and I think you shouldn't just speak on things that you don't know. And that's what I will say is I haven't done enough of my own research. I haven't rectified my own emotions with the past enough to be able to effectively articulate them to anyone. I feel like I'm actually speaking more on it now out loud than I ever have. These are, you know, inner dialogues I have with myself, but I don't think I've ever, you know, verbalized as much, and it still sounds the same. It's a lot of confusion, but that's how I feel. And I think sometimes that's how everybody's feeling. So it's just all learning experiences.
I'm very confused all the time about how I feel.
Okay, so it's not just me.
You're not alone. Yeah. But I do believe
but there are some people who are doing really good jobs, you know, educating us all. And they're the ones who are putting in the time to do the research. Yes, so like Muse and Dionysus, they're doing a wonderful job of doing the research and being able to articulate things from a place of fact and not just emotion, while educating and doing it in a way that's helpful to everyone. So I do think if you're not coming from a place with, you know, the background and the knowledge to educate, then just don't try. Just stay in the confusion like me, but, you know, be open to learning. I think for me, especially like growing up in a military family and growing up on bases, a lot of times you're military before you're anything else. And so it kind of trumps everything else. Everyone, you know, is a lot alike, and your parents make the same, and you know, the only things that are different are rank. And so for me, I wasn't aware of a lot of things that I've become aware of now as an adult, and things that I'm trying to teach my children. And so I didn't necessarily have the knowledge or the experience. So this is like, to a lot of people, it's just new, stepping into the space of being aware, you know, or I guess what it's called, woke. So this space of being woke.
Well, boundaries are always good, right? So I think some of the boundaries that we're talking about right now, as to, I'm a sociologist by, you know, education and career. So when I think about costuming, it doesn't end there for me. I think about who wore it. Why did they wear it? What did they dream of at night? What Did they pray? If they did, how would they pray? Like everything that's bound up in their life. But some costumers just want to make a pretty outfit, and that's that. And that's a boundary, and it's just fine. It's just as valid as what I want to do and what, my geek out is. So I like that we are talking about the fact that we are our ancestors' wildest dream, and we get to choose what our boundaries are, and we get to choose how in depth we want to go with any project, whether it is from 500 years ago, from 1,000 years ago, from 50 years ago. The same rules apply. We get to choose. So,
and that needed to be said. It did. Because I think especially for people like me who haven't fully stepped in there yet, I think a lot of that is what is stopping us. How far do we have to go? How much do we have to offer up? Is it okay for me to just make a dress because it's pretty and I really want to wear a hoop skirt? You know what I mean? So,
okay, let's move to a slightly more fun topic for just a little bit, and then we're going to circle back around at the end. How did you start in costuming?
How did I start? So I've always been drawn to vintage fashion. My Sweet 16, literally Marilyn Monroe was my inspiration for my outfits. Sorry, Dad. But I've always been into vintage fashion. And so when I started to sew, I started making things for my daughter. I had a brand new baby girl, and I wanted to make pretty hair bows and that sort of thing. And so then when I found out that she does not like hair bows or anything female gender specific, and so I was like, well, then fine, I'll make things for myself. And so I wanted to be able to make things that you couldn't just go and pick up fast fashion or buy off of a rack. And so I seen one of Angela Clayton's videos, and I was like, this is it for me. This is it. This is what I want to do. I want to sew a dress from some really old paper.
That is what Angela does. Indeed.
It is.
She does it really well, too.
She does it very well.
What keeps you in the costuming community?
In the costuming community, definitely community. That has been the best part. Sure, like sewing's fun. I really do enjoy it, but sewing is really a solo activity. When I'm sewing, I'm in my sewing room and I'm alone. And so YouTube is what made it a community activity, getting the perspective. And if I'm stuck on something, being able to post and ask an opinion, or should I use these buttons or these buttons? And so it's definitely been community to be able to have friends that I now have that will be my friends for life, as well as being able to ask, the 2,000 followers, should I use the pink or the blue buttons? So it's all of those things, but to sum it up would be community.
What would you like to see improve in the costuming community?
Just more inclusion. I think more conversation, because even just talking with you ladies today, I realized, like, for us vintage sewers, we've alienated ourselves more than you have. And I think we have felt more on the outskirts than you guys even viewed us. And so that took like a 30-second conversation to clear up. So just more talking, more inclusion, more openness, just more improvement on the community aspect of the community. But I do think we're all working actively to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's evident and it feels good and it's like a thing in the air. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm definitely happy.
We're fumbling around in the dark for each other at this point. Yeah.
We are. And it's like a whole thing. And so even just like explaining to people, like I talked to my mom about it, and she is so blown away that I'm not the only person on YouTube sewing vintage clothes. I'm like, Mom, it's a whole thing. I'm telling you, there's like dozens and dozens of us.
Mm-hmm.
So
hundreds.
Yeah, just to be around such like-minded people who share your weird interests. I think that's the internet doing what it was intended to do: connect people, like-minded people. Before that time, I'd have been hard pressed to find another Black girl who wanted to sew vintage dresses, and now I know at least 10.
There are a lot, actually.
Speaking of dresses that that you sew and that you have met other people who actually sew the same style as you, what is your favorite completed project?
I just finished my favorite completed project. It is a 1950s dress that is my anniversary dress now. It's for my wedding anniversary. And it was a very simple pattern that I got from Lady Marlowe. And so the dress was fairly easy, but it's beautiful. The fabric was beautiful. And then I took the authentic vintage trim that I got from the Tuberville sale, and I hand stitched it completely around the hem and the waistline of this dress. And it just really added something special to it. And I am so proud of it. It is so well made. It's like I can see the sum of the past 3 years, my experiences all in this dress, just from the design choice to the fabric. The zipper is good, like just all of the things. And just that adding that trim, I would have never been able to use that trim for anything else. Nothing would have ever felt special enough. And so to put it on my anniversary dress, and then I look at this dress, I'm like, I'm going to wear it for my anniversary, and we're going to take these pictures. And then what if my daughter wants to wear it like to her bridal shower or her anniversary one day, or even it's beautiful enough if she wanted to wear it to her wedding, she could. And so just like knowing that it is now a piece of history for me and for my family. And so it is just like a dream. I just like keep swooning over this dress.
That's so great. That triumph when you first, like the first time you actually set a zipper in and it looks good and you're like, I'm awesome. I'm so awesome.
I came running to my husband to show him, and I just kept doing, I said, this is better than some of the zippers on those clothes that we buy.
100%. Like that first time you're like, yes.
And then people are looking like, okay, it's a zipper. Like, no, if you don't sew, you have no idea.
This thing took 2 hours.
And it is smooth.
For my time period, there are no zippers, and I'm very happy about that.
Same.
There are lacing rings and eyelets. That's about it.
Those make me crazy too, though. Also, but like I have to set in 1 million buttonholes on Victorian stuff all the time. Closures in general.
Eyelets. Yes, closures. I did eyelets on my corset that I did. I did a corset from a Simplicity pattern just to see if I could. And then I got to a point where I just kind of quit looking at the instructions and did my own thing. And so my eyelets are so weird, and they took me so long. And I was just like, yeah, I will try again though.
Get grommets. Grommets are the way to go.
Definitely.
What costuming groups or organizations are you in?
So none as of yet, but I have a very lit group chat with a bunch of the vintage sewists, not even just from YouTube, but from Instagram as well. And so I consider that a group. It is a lot of fun. It's dinging all day and all night. And there's sewing things in there. There's vintage things in there. There's mom things and wife things. And so it is just, it's community right there on my phone, and it is lit.
That's awesome. What app do you guys use to do that?
We're just in Instagram.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
What conventions or events do you recommend?
So I haven't been to any as of yet, but I am hoping to attend Dandy Wellington's vintage cruise next year. So I'm in the process of trying to convince my husband of just how essential our attendance on that cruise is. So wish me luck.
If you would like me to talk to your husband, I'd be happy to.
Yes, I might need that.
Dandy, for people out there who don't know, Dandy Wellington is running a cruise. I think it is in October. It's on the Queen Elizabeth II, the QE2, and it is going from London to New York. So you're at sea the entire time. And it is I think 1930s event. And although you can wear what you want, like there's no one's going to judge you. Like he told me I could roll in my jeans and t-shirt if I wanted to. So if this is of interest to you at all, first of all, lots of people of color are going, so highly recommend.
I will be there.
Big YouTubers are going, so just saying. And then 3, Dandy, he's just the most swell guy. Like he's like a good host, like the consummate host, but he is also just a good man. He's a good friend. He's a good guy. Like 100% if you go on this cruise, he will make sure you're having a great time.
Yeah, I've only heard wonderful things about him. And at the top of that list, everyone just says how gracious of a host he is. And just like those impeccable vintage manners and that sort of thing. So I would definitely be in 1930s attire, like an excuse to dress up like that for a week. And then with all these different events and like your breakfast dress and your lunch, like that is going to be like, that's a costumer's dream come true.
It is. It's a really great opportunity for sure. Well, speaking of great people, who is your costumer crush?
So, like I said, when I first started, it was Angela Clayton for sure. That's Angela Clayton and Gertie. Those were the ones who were like first pushed to me when I first got on, YouTube and started typing in for tutorials. And now it is Serena. She is another woman of color who is a vintage sewer, and she dresses vintage every day, 100% in her daily life. And she is just so open and unapologetic. And she's really helped me a lot. She's been so great to me, just like along my journey, and really like on a personal level of trying to get me to come out of my shell and just be 100% authentic to who I am, and being okay with that. And she's like, if you want to dress vintage every day, girl, you do that. And so she's been amazing to me, and I definitely consider her an IRL friend.
I just noted that I have been saying her name wrong the entire time I have known of her existence. I've been saying Sorena.
Let's see, her real name is Serena, but her handle is Sorena. Serena. So Rena. So,
I've been saying it wrong.
Tell us about your entertainment routine when you are sewing or crafting. Even, do you have a playlist or shows that you watch?
So I've recently got into audiobooks. That has been a thing, and so right now I'm listening to the Chef on Trenches by Andre Talley, that Black guy that used to work for Vogue and all those things. And so what's been super helpful is he's actually the one reading the book. And so I'm learning to pronounce the names of designers and fabrics and things like that I have been saying wrong.
It's so Givenchy, baby. I love him.
Yes, all of those things. So I'm like, that's how you say that.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. And it is just like, it's like kind of like a good gossipy kind of read. And so it's been a lot of fun listening to that. And then I'm super hooked on like any season of any City of the Housewives, just like good trash television that you don't really have to look at because, your eyes are busy when you're working. So you can just listen to the arguing and that's fine. And then, of course, I'm into 90 Day Fiance. So those are my things right now.
That's awesome. I didn't even know he had a book out. So now I'm going to go search for that. I love audiobooks. Totally going to go check it out.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good in like a gossipy, tabloidy kind of way. And so I'm definitely here for it.
That's awesome. So who inspires you?
Well, all of you. Everyone on YouTube really inspires me, from the people with, millions like Miss Bernadette Banner to the person with 20 or 100, just anybody who's willing to put themselves out there like that. You know what I mean? Like, it really does take courage every time you hit upload to show these parts of yourself and parts of your world and leave it open for criticism. And, people on the internet can be savage, So,
yes, they can. Please don't be savage out there.
Yes. And so just to be able to have the courage to put yourself out there like that, your mistakes, your triumphs, that's what inspires me. Definitely.
Let's talk about gratitude for a minute. Who or what are you grateful for?
And so right now I am super just grateful for time. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, just how much time this really does take up, whether you're researching or reading or looking for the right fabric or actually constructing something. It takes a lot of time. And so I'm currently a stay-at-home mom. I left the corporate world I was in for years. And so I have a little bit more free time. Both my kids are finally back in school. Thank you. And so I have a few hours each day that are just for me, and I choose to spend it sewing. And so I'm grateful just for the time to be able to devote to something that I love. Time is a huge luxury, and it's not one that everyone has. And so I'm hyper aware of that and just very grateful for it. And so that's another thanks to my husband who allows me that time, provides that time. So it's like the best material. I mean, I do like purses and shoes, but but the best material is time.
That's a good note for people out there who maybe aren't costumers themselves, but are thinking about being savage. This sport takes so many things, and it is so prohibitive in so many different ways. It is time exclusive. It is money exclusive. It is like access exclusive. It's it is so exclusive in so many different ways that when people decide to give their opinions and criticize others and they don't take that into consideration, you're just making yourself look bad, yo.
Yes, really. Having a space for a sewing machine and to store your materials and all of those things, like it takes a lot to do what we do. And so I've just recently started to acknowledge that and kind of pat myself on the back for that. Like, this isn't an easy sport at all. And so to fully commit to it and the time, and I just scrapped a dress that I had spent 3 days on. It just was not coming out right. And so to do that, you know, when you kind of want to sit and cry for a second, you know, it's a lot of work and time and emotional energy and physical energy and money that goes into it. And so, it's not an easy thing. So sometimes acknowledge the work someone puts in before you just crap on it, you know?
Yeah. Even if it's something that you don't think is well done, or just shut it.
Yeah.
Just shut it down. Like that person went above and beyond.
Yes.
Just period.
So what my grandmother
Serena has a good one. She says when someone criticizes something that she makes, she just goes, "Oh, I can't wait to see yours. Tag me when you upload."
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah, you're criticizing something that you don't even do.
So if you could give a new costumer one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be go for it. Go for it and be okay with the fact that you're going to fail a million times. But you're going to succeed too, and that's going to be awesome.
You will succeed if you try.
Yep. And sometimes those victories are really small, but, you know, measure those as well, you know? So even that zipper that you finally got to go in right, that is a victory, and you are awesome.
Even if the rest of the dress looks horrible, you got that zipper in.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Circling back, if you have a closing message of equity or inclusion that you would like to send out, we are here to make space for that.
I think inclusion is a verb and an action, and one that we all have to commit to every day and in all ways, and be okay with sometimes we won't get it right, but if we're working for it actively, we'll all get there. So
Agreed. Well said.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Drew. It was lovely to get to know you a little bit better today. Thank you also to all of our viewers for joining us. We will leave a list of Drew's information below so you can go follow her on all her platforms.
Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you liked this channel, because we do this every other week. If you have a costumer of color that you think we should interview, leave it down below. There's a Google form that you can fill out and let us know who your favorite costumers of color are. We're happy to include historical, which includes vintage, and also cosplayers and any other kind of costumer that you guys can think of. So we are an inclusive space here. So if you've got a costumer of any kind of color, even ones who don't make their own costumes, we are very happy to talk to them. Do make sure to leave a little love for Drew in the comments down below, and we will see you guys next time. Stay safe out there. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for doing this.